Hello my dear students, welcome to today's lesson. So this is the 13th lesson of your grade 10 science textbook. I am going to discuss some extra questions. As you can remember students, we discussed the types of classification. Artificial and natural classifications. Under natural classifications, you all know it is the scientific classification. So as an example, we discussed the 3-domain classification by Carl Woese in somewhat detail. So you all know how organisms are classified as domain Archaea, domain Bacteria and domain Eukarya and all the subgroups under that. Then we discussed the 4 kingdoms of domain Eukarya, and under that also we discuss the different phyla belonging to invertebrates of animals and the vertebrate classes. And as also we discuss the plants, the flowering plants and the non-flowering plants as well. Thereafter we discuss binomial nomenclature proposed by Carolus Linnaeus. So now you all are familiar with the classification system and the naming of organisms. We discussed the questions given in your textbook as well. So I am going to start with the extra question 1. Extra question 1, select the most suitable answer. So you are familiar with these types of questions as well, MCQ questions or multiple choice questions. So you have to select the most suitable answer. The first question, the first person to introduce a scientific classification is. So if we look at the answers, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin is a scientist related to evolution. He proposed the theory of evolution. So he is related to evolution. Then we have Aristotle. You can remember students, 4th BC, before Christ. He was the first philosopher to introduce the scientific classification. So here he is the person who introduced the first scientific classification. Scientific classification. Then we have Robert Whittaker. What did he introduce? The 5-kingdom classification. 5-kingdom classification. And then we have Carolus Linnaeus. He introduced 2 things. One is the Linnaean classification. I have told you all that the first successful scientific classification. From his classification only, we have the different taxonomical levels, the hierarchy of taxonomical levels. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. That is how we classify organisms. And also he introduced the binomial nomenclature. So Carolus Linnaeus, he proposed the successful scientific classification. And also he introduced the binomial nomenclature. So the question says the first person to introduce a scientific classification. Here you can see all these 3 people. They are related to scientific classification, but the question says first person to introduce. So that would be Aristotle. If the question had been to say the first successful classification, then we could have gone with Carolus Linnaeus. But since it says first scientific classification, it's Aristotle. Then we have the second question. The 3-domain classification was proposed by, that also you all know, Carl Woese. So you know the answer, Carl Woese. We look at the other answers as well. Aristotle, as I said again, the first scientific classification. Then Robert Whittaker, 5-kingdom classification. And Carolus Linnaeus, successful scientific classification known as the Linnaean system. And also the binomial nomenclature. So the answer to the second question is the 3-domain classification was proposed by Carl Woese. With that, I will move on to the next question. Question number 3. Main criteria used in the classification of plants is. How do we classify plants? The non-flowering plants and flowering plants based on whether they produce flowers or not. So that's the main criteria. Then under non-flowering plants, what do we have? Seedless plants and seed plants. Under flowering plants, monocots and dicots. So we look at the answers. Shape of leaves. Shape of leaves are used to identify plants. Then nature of flowers, that we use to identify whether they are monocots or dicots. Monocots have trimerous flowers. Dicots have tetramerous or pentamerous flowers, and also by looking at the shape of the petals, sepals and all that, you can identify the flower as well. Whether it's a shoe flower or a rose or whatever the flower, you can identify the plant. Then we have the number of cotyledons. Yes, we use that to classify the plants as monocots and dicots. Root system. Again, we use to identify the monocots and dicots. Monocots have fibrous roots, dicots have taproots. So, the criteria used will be number of cotyledons. So, here it's going to be number of cotyledons. So, main criteria used in the classification of plants is number of cotyledons. Then the fourth question, not a monocotyledonous plant, not a monocot or monocotyledonous plant. Coconut, yes, it's a monocot. Areca nut, that's also a monocot plant. How do you all identify that? They have compound leaves. In the leaves there is parallel venation. They have cylindrical stem. There's no branching, unbranched stem. And also the diameter of the stem is even. And if you look at the roots, they all have fibrous roots. Then if we take pepper, pepper is a dicot plant. You all have seen the branching, it's a climber. It has very thin stem, but it does have branching. If you look at the leaves of pepper, they have reticulate venation. So those are the common things that you would have noticed. And you know pepper is a dicot plant. It has branching as well. Although the stem is thin, there's branching. Then if we take grass, again you all know. Parallel venation, fibrous roots, no branching. So that means they are again a monocot plant. So the question is to select the not a monocotyledonous plant. Coconut, areca nut, pepper is not a monocotyledonous plant. Grass again is a monocot plant. So I am sure you were able to answer these questions correctly. With that, I will move on to the next question. Question number 5. Correct way of writing the scientific name of a modern man. Scientific name of modern man. So you all have to remember the standards. What are the standards? Always the scientific name has 2 epithets. First one is the generic epithet, second one is the specific epithet. And always the first letter of the generic epithet has to be capital. Rest of the letters have to be simple letters. And usually the names are written in either Latin or Greek. And when handwritten, you have to underline the words separately. And when they are printed, they have to be italicized. So if you remember all these standards, when you look at the name, you can easily identify whether it's correctly written or not. Look at the first one. Homo sapiens sapiens. What's the problem? First, generic epithet is correct. Capital letter, rest are simple letter. But here you can see the S is a capital letter. That is wrong. S has to be simple. Specific epithet, all the letters have to be simple. So that's incorrect. Then we have the next one. Homo sapiens, all are in capital letters. That's also incorrect. But in both, they are all italicized. That's not a problem. That is correct. Then we have the third answer. All the letters are simple. Here the H should have been a capital letter. So that is also incorrect. Then we have the last one, Homo sapiens. First letter capital, the rest are simple, 2 epithets and they are italicized. So that is the correct answer. Fourth one, it has been written according to the standards of scientific nomenclature. So correct way of writing the scientific name of modern man is the fourth answer. Then we have the sixth question, the first organism to invade land during evolution. What is the organism? You can remember the vertebrates. When it comes to vertebrates, we have the Pisces, fishes who live in sea or water, aquatic water, fresh water, marine water, any aquatic environment. Then from fishes, it is amphibians. They need the water to complete their life cycle, but they migrated to the terrestrial environment or they invaded land during evolution. So if we look at the answers, mammalia you have in all different environments. Whales are there in the sea, the rest of the animals in the and man on land, and we have bats who normally use the trees and higher elevations. Then reptilia, they are well adapted to living on land. Amphibia, first organism to invade land during evolution. And Pisces, they only live in aquatic environment. So the correct answer will be amphibia. I am sure you can remember that. With that, students, I will move on to the next question. Not a standard of binomial nomenclature. So we discussed all the standards before also. We will look at the answers. The generic name and specific name are the two epithets. That is correct. There should be two epithets, the generic name and the specific name. That is correct. The generic name and specific name are the two epithets of the scientific name. That is correct. Then we have the second answer. The first letter of the specific epithet should be capital. That is wrong. It should not be the specific epithet. It should be the first letter of the generic epithet. When printed, it should be italicized. That of course is correct. When printed, it should be italicized. And then the fourth one, the first letter of the generic epithet should be capital. That of course is correct. So what is the question? Not a standard of binomial nomenclature. That is the second one. The first letter of the specific epithet should be capital. That is incorrect, or that is not a standard. Then the eighth question. The fish with the endoskeleton made up of cartilages belong to the class. So endoskeleton of fish, you all know, are of two types. If it's cartilages, we call them cartilaginous fishes. Bones means we call them bony fishes. And the groups have names as well. Osteichthyes for bony fishes and chondrichthyes for cartilaginous fishes. So the fish with the endoskeleton made up of cartilages belong to the class. So here we need to consider the class. Chondrichthyes, they have cartilage endoskeleton. Osteichthyes, bony endoskeleton. Fishes and aves are birds. So the question is, the fish with the endoskeleton made up of cartilages belong to the class Chondrichthyes. That is the answer. So I'm sure you would have understood these two questions. With that, students, I will move on to the next one. Here you can see a group of organisms that are well adapted to live in water are known as. So a group of organisms that are well adapted to live in water. What are those organisms? The fishes. So here if we look at the answers, pisces, amphibia, reptilia, mammalia. So out of that, pisces, fishes are well adapted to live in water. So it's the first answer. Amphibians, they need water to complete their life cycle. So they live on land and they need to go to the water to complete their life cycle. Reptilia, well adapted to live in land, live on land or the terrestrial environment. Mammalia again, as I told you before also, whales are found in the sea. Most of the mammals are terrestrial inhabitants. Even not only whales, even dolphins, all those are in sea. Then we have bats which are at higher elevations, trees and all that. So we can't say they are well adapted to live in water. So the first answer, Pisces or Pisces, that includes all the fishes, is the group of organisms that are well adapted to live in water. Then the next question. Select the false statement regarding prokaryotic organisms. So here it is the false statement regarding prokaryotic organism. What are prokaryotic organisms? The cell of the organisms do not have an organized nucleus, or they do not have a defined nucleus. They don't possess a defined nucleus. So under prokaryotes, you all can remember the archaea and bacteria, all the organisms are prokaryotic organisms. So the false statement regarding prokaryotic organisms. They possess a well-defined nucleus. That is wrong. They possess a well-defined nucleus. Wrong. They can live everywhere in the environment. Is that correct? Domain bacteria. Bacteria and cyanobacteria, they can live in any environment. They can live in the normal environment as well as the other environments, extreme environments. But the archaea, that is methanogens and halophiles, they usually live in extreme environments. Then if we look at the third one, bacteria and cyanobacteria belong to this group. That is also correct. And they can be pathogenic. That is also correct. So here you can see can live everywhere in the environment. Yes, bacteria that can live everywhere in the environment. Then bacteria and cyanobacteria belong to this group. So that is also correct. And they can be pathogenic. Why? Bacteria can be, some bacteria can be pathogenic. So that is also correct. But cyanobacteria all are autotrophic. So because of that, the false statement will be the first statement. They possess a well-defined nucleus. That is false because they don't have a defined nucleus. With that, students, I will move on to the next question. So the question number 11, example of a seeded non-flowering plant. You all know the examples of seeded non-flowering plants or non-flowering seeded plants. That is Cycas and Pinus. If you look at the plants, Pogonatum is a non-flowering seedless plant. Cycas, yes, non-flowering seeded plant or seed plant. Nephrolepis again is a seedless plant and Selaginella again seedless plant. So the correct answer would be Cycas. Example of a seeded non-flowering plant. So seeded non-flowering plant, or we call it as non-flowering seed plant. Both terms are fine. Then we have the 12th question. First group of organisms to possess a fluid-filled cavity known as the coelom. So the first group of organisms to evolve a body cavity, those are the coelenterate or cnidarians, and their body cavity is called as coelenteron. That's why the name coelenterates. Then after that, it was the annelids who developed the coelom. So annelids are the first group of organisms that developed or possessed a fluid-filled cavity known as the coelom. So if we look at the answers, coelenterata, as I told you, it is the coelenteron. Coelenteron. Then Annelida, yes, coelom. Mollusca, coelom. Echinodermata also coelom. But out of those, Annelida is the group of organisms that evolved the first group to evolve a fluid-filled cavity called coelom. So first group of organisms to possess a fluid-filled cavity known as the coelom is Annelida. With that, students, I will move on to the next question. Animal that shows radial symmetry. Radial symmetry. The first organism, jellyfish. Jellyfish, what is the group of jellyfish? It belongs to Cnidaria or Coelenterata. So they have a body form where the symmetry is radial symmetry. Then the second one, squid. Squid belongs to group Mollusca. Mollusks have a bilateral symmetry. So that is not the answer. Then the third one, tapeworm. Worms belong to segmented worms, annelids. They have bilateral symmetry. Then how about snail? Snail and squid, they both belong to the same group, mollusk or mollusca. But squid has a bilateral symmetry. Snail, because of its shell, does not have a symmetry, although it belongs to mollusca. So the answer here will be jellyfish. Jellyfish has radial symmetry. You can remember the shape also, like a umbrella kind of shape. So with all the tentacles. So it is a radial symmetric body. Question number 14. Features of an organism is given below. First one, diploblastic. So you can remember, students, under invertebrates, only the cnidarians or the coelentrates have a diploblastic body, 2 germinal layers. All the other groups, all the other invertebrates, they have a triploblastic body. That means the body is made up of 3 germinal layers. Then coelomic. So I told you all, we discussed in the previous question, annelids are the organisms that evolved the first coelom, a fluid-filled cavity called the coelom. So thereafter all the organisms possess a coelom. So they are all coelomic. Annelida, mollusca, arthropoda, echinodermata, all of them are coelomic. Then see, body is divided into 3 parts, head, thorax and abdomen. What are those organisms? Those are the arthropods. Arthropods have their body divided into 3 parts, head, thorax and abdomen. You all can remember the segments. The segments of the body combine and form the functional segments called tagma. And the tagma are the head, thorax and abdomen. So if we look at the question, features of an arthropod. So here features of an arthropoda or arthropod are, what are they? Diploblastic? No. They are triploblastic. Coelomic? Yes. And body is divided into 3 parts. That is also correct. So the answers have to be B and C. A and B? No. A and C? No. B and C is correct. A, B, and C all, that is also not correct. Why? Because they are not diploblastic. They are triploblastic. So I am sure you were able to answer all these questions correctly. With that, students, I will move on to the next question. Question number 15. So here you can see, consider the characteristics given below. So has muscular foot, body is moistened with mucus, body is covered by a calcium carbonate shell. What are these features? Features of a mollusk. Phylum Mollusca. Organism that possesses the above features is cockroach. Cockroach is an arthropod, so it doesn't have. Scorpion again is an arthropod. Snail, yes, it is a mollusk. So it has a muscular foot, body is moistened with mucus and body is covered by a calcium carbonate shell or an exoskeleton. So snail, correct answer. Earthworm is an annelid. It is a segmented worm but it doesn't have these features. So the correct answer here is snail. The correct answer here is snail. So the organism with all those characteristics, it has to belong to phylum Mollusca. So snail is an organism that belongs to phylum Mollusca. So, muscular foot moistened with mucus and body covered with calcium carbonate shell. Then we have question number 16. A feature of a dicot plant. Dicot plant. What are the features? They have branched stem. Their stem is broader at the base and thin towards the tip. And also they possess reticulate venation in leaves and they have a taproot system with lateral roots as the root system. They have flowers that are tetramerous or pentamerous. So those are the features of dicot plants. Has a taproot system. That is correct. Leaves possess parallel venation. That is for monocots. Stem is unbranched. That again for monocots. Diameter of the stem is even. That also for monocots. So the correct answer will be has a taproot system. So a feature of a dicot plant has a taproot system. With that, students, I will move on to the next one. Question number 17, feature of a shark. So what is a shark? It is a fish. A fish, and it has cartilaginous skeleton. If you can remember the chondrichthyes fish. It belongs to class chondrichthyes, cartilaginous fish. So possess a terminal mouth. Is that correct? Terminal mouth is for bony fishes. Endoskeleton is cartilaginous. That is correct. This is incorrect. Gills are covered by a pair of operculum. That is incorrect because the bony fishes have gills covered by a pair of operculum. So that is incorrect. And they possess a homocercal caudal fin. That is also incorrect. Homocercal is a symmetric caudal fin. So that is for bony fishes. They have a heterocercal caudal fin. So this is also incorrect. So out of the features, feature of a shark, that is a fish, that is a cartilaginous fish. So endoskeleton is cartilaginous. That is the correct answer. Then we will look at the 18th question. Scientists who introduced a successful nomenclature of organism. Successful nomenclature of organism. What is the successful nomenclature? Binomial nomenclature. And who is the scientist? Carolus Linnaeus. So we call him the father of nomenclature. Aristotle, you can remember, he introduced the first scientific classification in 4th century BC. Robert Whittaker, 5 kingdom classification, and Carolus Linnaeus, he introduced the classification successful scientific classification, the Linnean system, all the hierarchical levels, and also the successful binomial nomenclature. Then Carl Woese introduced the 3-domain classification. So the answer to this question, scientist who introduced a successful nomenclature of organisms is Carolus Linnaeus. So I am sure students you were able to answer all these questions correctly. With that, I will move on to the next one. The 19th question, not a useful effect of fungus. So it should not be a useful effect of fungus, not a useful effect of fungus. Vinegar production, yes. Yeast is used, so that's a useful effect. Production of antibiotics, yes, you can remember Penicillium fungus. Then alcohol fermentation, yes, that is also a useful effect. Vinegar production, alcohol fermentation, for both we use yeast, Saccharomyces. Then causes pityriasis. That is a harmful effect. So that is an effect of fungus, but it is a harmful effect. So that is the correct answer. Not a useful effect of fungus. Causes pityriasis. Then we have the last question under MCQs. Group of organisms well adapted to live on land. What are the groups of organisms well adapted to live on land? Those are the reptiles. So if we look at the answers, amphibia, they live on land but they need water to complete their life cycle. Then reptilia, they are well adapted to live on land. So mammalia, there are organisms who live in the terrestrial environment as well as the aquatic environment, mainly the marine environment. Whales, dolphins are there. So apes, they are well adapted for flying. So the answer to this question, group of organisms well adapted to live on land is reptilia. So those are the reptiles. They are well adapted to live on land. So I am sure students you were able to answer all these 20 MCQ questions. So after this I will do some long questions. I will move on to the next one. Extra question 2. Write 2 features of organisms that belong to domain Archaea. two features of organisms that belong to domain Archaea. So domain Archaea, what are they? Methanogens and halophiles. Their body, they are all unicellular. Their body is made up of prokaryotic cells. Are they sensitive to antibiotics? No, they are not sensitive to antibiotics. So they cannot be destroyed by antibiotics. And where do they live? They usually live in extreme environments like hot springs, ice glaciers, deserts, all the extreme environmental conditions. So those are the features of organisms that belong to domain Archaea. So you are supposed to write two features. So I will say prokaryotic organisms, and they are not sensitive to antibiotics. So you can also say they live in extreme environmental conditions. Write two features of organisms that belong to domain Archaea. Prokaryotic organisms, they are not sensitive to antibiotics. Then the next part of the question. Write two features of organisms that belong to domain bacteria. So here again two features, domain bacteria. So domain bacteria and cyanobacteria. What are their features? They are again made up of prokaryotic cells that do not have an organized nucleus. Then they are all unicellular organisms. Then if you look at domain bacteria, they are sensitive to antibiotics. They can live in any environment. The normal environments, land, water, even on and inside living organisms, host cells, as well as in extreme environmental conditions. So those are the features of organisms that belong to domain bacteria. And you all know, students, under domain bacteria, we have bacteria and cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria, they are all autotrophic. Whereas bacteria, some are decomposers, some are pathogenic. So there are different types of bacteria. So if we write two features of organisms that belong to domain bacteria, we can say they are unicellular and they are sensitive to antibiotics. So those are the two features I have written. You can also include about the environment, any environment, and also you can say some are pathogenic. All those can be included here, or you can even say they are prokaryotic organisms. So write two features of organisms that belong to domain bacteria. They are unicellular, they are sensitive to antibiotics. I will move on to the next question. Extra question 3. Write the two groups of organisms that belong to domain bacteria. So two groups of organisms that belong to domain bacteria. I told you all before this also. Bacteria and cyanobacteria. So bacteria and cyanobacteria. Then we have write two harmful effects of bacteria. Two harmful effects of bacteria. What are they? They cause diseases and they spoil food. So the harmful effects, they cause diseases to man, animals as well as plants, and food spoilage. So those are the two harmful effects of bacteria. With that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 4. Write 4 diseases caused by bacteria to man. You all can remember those diseases. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, tetanus and leprosy. So write 4 diseases caused by bacteria to men. Tuberculosis, tetanus, pneumonia and leprosy. So the diseases are tuberculosis, tetanus, pneumonia and leprosy. Then the second part of the question, write 2 useful effects of bacteria. What are the useful effects of bacteria? You all can remember, students, bacteria are decomposers. So they decompose dead plant and animal bodies or dead organic matter. So that is a useful effect. Then they fix nitrogen. You all can remember rhizobium bacteria. It involves in the symbiotic relationship with root nodules of the legume plant. So there they fix atmospheric nitrogen. And there are bacteria that are free living bacteria. So that also fixes nitrogen. So nitrogen fixation, bacteria, they are decomposers. They can decompose dead plant and animal bodies. So that is useful to the environment, because when they decompose these complex organic materials, they provide nutrients to the soil. So that is one useful effect. Then they are useful in fixing nitrogen. You all can remember, students, rhizobium bacteria, they are symbiotic in relationship. They form a symbiotic relationship with the root nodules of legume plants and they fix nitrogen. So that is a useful effect. The same way they are used in dairy products. Production of dairy products, you can remember production of yogurt, Lactobacillus streptococcus, and also other curd, production of curd. There are also bacteria is needed. Same way, bacteria is used in fiber industry. So, separate out fibers. You all can remember the pectate is the substance that is present between the fibers of, let's say, coconut husk. Between the fibers, there is pectate. So, pectinase is an enzyme that is used to separate these fibers. Then there is Methanococcus. Methanococcus is involved in production of biogas, methane gas. So those are all useful effects of bacteria. You need to write only 2 useful effects. So I will say nitrogen fixation, they provide nitrogen ions to soil, or they fix nitrogen from the atmosphere into forms that can be absorbed by the plants. So that is nitrogen fixation. Decomposers. So when we say decomposers, they decompose the body of dead plants and animals. That is a useful effect. So write 2 useful effects of bacteria. Nitrogen fixation, so they provide nitrogen ions to soil. Then decomposers, they decompose the body of dead plants and animals. In addition to that, I told you all the production of dairy products, yogurt, curd, all those. Then production of biogas, Methanococcus, and also in the coir industry, again to separate the fibers of coconut husk, and also the other fibers as well. So those are all different useful effects of bacteria. You can write any 2 useful effects. With that, students, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 5. Write 2 features of organisms that belong to domain Eukarya. So again, 2 features and domain Eukarya. So why do we call them Eukarya, domain Eukarya? Because they have a eukaryotic cellular organization. What is the meaning of eukaryotic cellular organization? A cell that possesses a well-defined nucleus. So those are the eukaryotic organisms. So they are all organisms that can live in any environment. You can find them in the aquatic environment, terrestrial environment, in air. They can live in other moist environments, so they live in any environment. And they are not sensitive to antibiotics. So those are the features of organisms that belong to domain Eukarya. So here if we write two features, so if we write the two features, they possess eukaryotic cellular organization and also they are not sensitive to antibiotics. So those are the two features of organisms that belong to domain Eukarya. Possesses eukaryotic cellular organization, then they are not sensitive to antibiotics. The second part, write the four kingdoms that belong to domain Eukarya. What are the four kingdoms? Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Plantae and Kingdom Animalia. So Kingdom Protista. Then we have Kingdom Fungi. Kingdom Plantae. And Kingdom Animalia. Kingdom Animalia. So Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Plantae and Kingdom Animalia. Those are the four kingdoms that belong to domain Eukarya. I am sure you were able to answer these questions correctly. With that students, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 6. Write two features of organisms that belong to Kingdom Protista. Two features of organisms that belong to Kingdom Protista. What are these organisms? Protista, we have algae and protozoans. So you all know all of them are eukaryotic organisms. So they have a well-defined nucleus in their cells. Then how about their cellular structure? They can be either unicellular or multicellular. Protozoans are unicellular. Algae, there are unicellular algae. Chlamydomonas is a unicellular algae and there are multicellular organisms as well. Ulva, you can remember, is a thallus structure. So those are some features of organisms that belong to Kingdom Protista. Then protozoans are heterotrophic and algae, they are all photosynthetic because they possess chlorophyll. So they are photosynthetic organisms. Those are the features of organisms that belong to Kingdom Protista. So here we can say they can be unicellular or multicellular and some are photosynthetic so that is algae and some are heterotrophic. That is protozoans. So those are the two features I have written. They can be unicellular or multicellular. Some are photosynthetic, that is algae, and some are heterotrophic, that is protozoans. There are other features as well that you can write. The next part of the question, various protozoans cause disease to man. Write 3 such diseases and the causative protozoa. What are the diseases you all know? They cause amoebiasis. What is the causative protozoan? Amoeba. So you know that. So amoebiasis, amoeba. Amoeba, if it is because it's a scientific name, we need to underline it. Amoeba. Then what else? They cause malaria. Malaria is caused by what? Malaria is caused by Plasmodium. And we have the third one, that is sleeping sickness. So that is another disease caused by that is also a protozoan. So you all know amoebiasis is caused by amoeba, malaria is caused by Plasmodium, sleeping sickness you can refer to it as caused by a protozoan because these are given in your books as well. So amoebiasis, malaria and sleeping sickness. Various protozoans cause diseases to man. Write 3 such diseases and the causative protozoan. So that is the answer. Then I will move on to the next question. Extra question 7. Write 2 useful effects of protists. So when we say useful effects of protists, again they are the protozoans and algae. Algae you all know, they are the primary producers in aquatic organisms. So they are useful for the existence of all the food chains and food web in aquatic environments, aquatic ecosystem. So that is one useful effect. Algae are the primary producers in aquatic ecosystems. What else can you write? We need to write 2 useful effects. How about agar? Agar is a substance that is used to produce culture media. So that is extracted from algae. The same way alginic acid that is used in making ice cream, that is also extracted from algae. Then there is the symbiotic relationship, lichens, between algae or cyanobacteria and fungus. So fungus will be one organism, the other organism can be either an algae or a cyanobacteria. So that is also present in the environment, a useful effect. So write 2 useful effects of protists. We have written one, algae are the primary producers in aquatic ecosystems. The other one I will say, they are used to extract agar. You can even write for the production of or extraction of alginic acid that is used in the production of ice cream, or else you can talk about lichens. Lichens are symbiotic or mutualistic relationship between algae and fungus. So those are useful effects of protists. But we all know, students, protozoans are not useful to us. They are all heterotrophs. They are pathogenic. So they are not useful to us, or they don't have any useful effects. So with that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 8. Write 2 features of organisms that belong to kingdom fungi. So you all know the organisms, students. They are all fungi, funguses. They belong to kingdom fungi. They come under domain Eukarya. So they all have a eukaryotic cellular organization. Then if you take kingdom fungi, They are either unicellular or multicellular. You can remember, students, yeast is unicellular. There is mushroom, then other mycelium structures. So they are all multicellular organisms. How about their cell? Cell has an organized nucleus, so it's an eukaryotic cell. And also the cell wall is made up of chitin. Chitinous cell wall. That's a specific feature of kingdom fungi. So they are eukaryotic cellular organization. They possess a chitinous cell wall, and also they can be unicellular or multicellular. What is the other one? They are all heterotrophic organisms. They can be either decomposers or they can be saprophytic. Decomposers decompose organic material, so they live on dead animals and plants. So that's saprophytic organisms. And also they are not sensitive to antibiotics. Those are the features of kingdom fungi. So I will write two features there. One, I will say they have chitinous cell wall, or we can say they have chitinous cell wall, and also we can say all are heterotrophic. Under that we can say decomposers, or you can say saprophytic. Those are the organisms. So write two features of organisms that belong to kingdom fungi. They have chitinous cell wall and all are heterotrophic organisms, decomposers or saprophytic. In addition to that, you can say they have a eukaryotic cellular organization. So the cell has an organized nucleus, and also they can be unicellular or multicellular, and also they are not sensitive to antibiotics. Those are features of kingdom fungi. You can write any two features. With that, students, I will move on to the next part of the question. What are the harmful effects of fungus to man? Harmful effects. You all can remember two main harmful effects. One is it causes diseases. The other one, they spoil food. So, causes diseases and food spoilage. So, those are the two harmful effects of fungus to man. Then we have the third part. Make a list of the useful effects of fungus to man. What are the useful effects of fungus to man? They are used in the production of bread, bakery industry, and production of alcohol or fermentation of alcohol. That is one useful effect. Then you can remember for that we use yeast, Saccharomyces. Then there is antibiotics. For example, penicillin is extracted from Penicillium fungus. So the production of antibiotics, that is another useful effect. Then we have the mushrooms, agaricus. They are protein supplements. They are used as protein supplementary food, mushrooms. So those are useful effects of fungus to man. Not only that, fungus we said, they are all heterotrophic organisms. They are decomposers or they are saprophytic organisms. So they help to decompose dead plants and animals. So that is also an advantage to man. So we can write, we need to write a list of the useful effects to man. So we will write everything. First I can say they are decomposers. So they decompose organic matter. Then used in fermentation of alcohol used in production of bread. So decomposers used in fermentation of alcohol, used in production of bread. Then I told you all about the mushroom. Mushroom is used as protein supplement. Used to produce antibiotics. So these are some useful effects of fungus to man. They wanted you to make a list of the useful effects of fungus to man. Decomposers, so they decompose organic matter. Then they are used in fermentation of alcohol, used in production of bread. Then mushroom is used as protein supplement, and also it is used, the fungus is used to produce antibiotics. You can, I'm sure you would have all written all these answers. So the useful effects of fungus to man. With that, students, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 9. Put a tick if the statement is correct and wrong if the statement is incorrect. The first statement. Occasionally you can find multicellular bacteria. Is that correct? No. All bacteria, they are unicellular organisms. So that statement is incorrect. So wrong. Then spherical, rod, spiral and comma are some shapes in which bacteria can exist. That is of course correct. Spherical shape, coccus. Rod shape, bacillus. Spiral shape, spirillum. And comma shaped, vibrio. So those are the different body shapes in which bacteria can exist. That is correct. Then all cyanobacteria are heterotrophic organisms. That is also incorrect. Why? Cyanobacteria produce their own food. So they are all autotrophic organisms. Then the fourth one. Organisms of kingdom bacteria and kingdom protista become useful by involving in mutualistic relationship. That is correct. Organisms of kingdom bacteria. We have bacteria and cyanobacteria. Then kingdom protista, protozoans and algae. So these cyanobacteria and algae from kingdom protista, cyanobacteria from bacteria and algae from protista, they involve in forming lichens. So I told you all, either algae or cyanobacteria combine with fungus. Fungus is a decomposer, saprophytic, so it provides the nutrients, minerals. Whereas these two, cyanobacteria and algae, they can produce their own food, autotrophic. So they produce the food and supply to the fungus. So therefore, they exist in a mutualistic relationship. Organisms of kingdom bacteria and kingdom protista become useful by involving in mutualistic relationships. That is correct. Then the fifth one, protista and fungi can be used to produce antibiotics. Protista, again protista, it's only protozoans and algae. Do we use them to produce antibiotics? No. But we can use fungi to produce antibiotics. That is one of the useful effects. So this statement is incorrect because we cannot use protista to produce antibiotics. I am sure you marked all of them correctly, students. With that, I will move on to the rest of the parts. There we have Paramecium is a bacteria. Is it a bacteria? No. It is a protozoan. It belongs to kingdom Protista. So that is also incorrect. Then we have the seventh one. Yeast is used in fermentation of alcohol. That is correct. Yeast is a fungus, Saccharomyces. It's used for the fermentation of alcohol. That is correct. Then we have the eighth one. Pityriasis is a disease caused by fungus. That is also correct. Pityriasis is a disease caused by fungus. What is the fungus? Candida. The disease is also known as aluhum. So that is caused by a fungus. That is again correct. Then the ninth one. Mushrooms are used as protein supplements. That is also correct. Mushrooms, that is agaricus, that is used as protein supplements. We include mushrooms in our food in order to obtain proteins. So fungi can be leaf-shaped or horseshoe-shaped. Is that correct? No. Why? Because fungi are either unicellular, yeast, or it can be in the form of mycelium. Only the reproductive structures are visible to the naked eye. For example, mushroom. So what are the organisms that have this leaf-shaped or horseshoe-shaped? The protists. Protozoans, they have various shapes. So you know they can be either leaf-shaped or horseshoe-shaped or other shapes as well. So this statement is incorrect. Fungi can be leaf-shaped or horseshoe-shaped. That is incorrect. So I am sure students, you all were able to answer all these statements correctly and mark them correctly whether they were correct or incorrect. So with that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 10. Write 3 features of organisms that belong to kingdom Plantae. 3 features of organisms that belong to kingdom Plantae. They are all plants, so they are all multicellular. They are all photosynthetic. So when we say photosynthetic, they all have the chlorophyll pigment. They are all green in color because they possess the green color chlorophyll pigment. So that is used to carry out photosynthesis. So they are all autotrophic organisms. So those are the features of organisms that belong to kingdom Plantae. Multicellular, they are eukaryotic. So we can say multicellular, eukaryotic organisms. I will say plants. So that is one feature. Then we can say they are green in color. Green in color because they possess chlorophyll. And also we can say they are all photoautotrophic. Or you can say photosynthetic. Or you can even say they all carry out photosynthesis. So they are all photoautotrophic or they are photosynthetic. 3 features of kingdom Plantae. Multicellular eukaryotic plants, or you can say organisms. They are green in color because they possess chlorophyll, and also they are all photoautotrophic or photosynthetic. So those are the features of kingdom Plantae. Then if we look at the next part of the question, what is the criteria used to divide kingdom Plantae into the 2 main groups? What are the 2 main groups? The flowering plants and non-flowering plants. So what is the criteria used? So for this question, students, you all can't write the answer as flowering plants and non-flowering plants. You have to say the criteria. So they are classified based on whether they can produce flowers or not. So you can say they are classified based on the ability to produce flowers. So if they can produce flowers, they are flowering plants. If they cannot or they do not produce flowers, they are non-flowering plants. What is the criteria used to divide kingdom Plantae into the two main groups? They are classified based on the ability to produce flowers or based on whether they produce flowers or not. So students, these are the two parts of the question. We discussed the three features of organisms that belong to kingdom Plantae. I missed one feature. You all can remember students, all the cells. We said they are multicellular eukaryotic plants. All the cells contain cellulose cell wall. So that is also a feature of kingdom Plantae, only specific to kingdom Plantae. You all have studied carbohydrates. Under that we have discussed polysaccharides, students. You all can remember cellulose is made up of glucose units and it is only present in plants. The animal cell does not have a cell wall. So only the plant cells have a cellulose cell wall, and cellulose does not digest in the digestive system. So that is a special feature of kingdom Plantae. Cells are made up of cellulose cell wall. You can also write that answer. Here I have written multicellular eukaryotic plants. They are green in color because they possess chlorophyll and they are all photoautotrophic or photosynthetic. And then the criteria used to classify plants, that is based on producing flowers or not. So those are the two parts of this question, students. With that, I will end this chapter and in the next chapter, I will discuss some more questions.